If you're an agent anywhere in the research triangle right now, you know how wild this market is. It's booming. But that boom has created this hidden trap inside our CMAs. It's a trap that pits new construction against resale listings, and honestly, it can mislead sellers, frustrate buyers, and even kill a deal right at the finish line. So let's dive in and really unpack a methodology to get this right.
And let me be super clear. This is not a hypothetical scenario. This is happening every single day in Wake County. A price gets recorded in the MLS, but it just doesn't tell the whole story. And when we use that incomplete story to price a resale home, we're setting ourselves, and way more importantly, our clients, up for a major fall. All right, so here's the game plan. First, we're going to look at that price on paper versus what a buyer really paid. Then we'll define a huge concept I call comp contamination. After that, we'll walk through the 3 most costly ways this whole thing blows up in the real world. And finally, I'm going to give you a super clear, segmented approach to nail your pricing and explain it perfectly to your clients. Okay, first things first, we have to get our heads around the basic disconnect. The gap between the number that shows up in the MLS and the actual effective price a buyer is paying for new construction. So let's go right back to that opening example. The MLS shows a sale at $475,000. It's a hard number, right? Looks like a perfect comp. But here's what's not on the page: the builder incentives. We're talking closing cost credits, rate buydowns, all the stuff that effectively dropped the buyer's real cost down to around $438,000. The key takeaway here is that the financial reality for that buyer is almost $40,000 different than the data point we're about to use. That's huge. So when we accidentally mix these inflated new build prices with our standard resale comps, we create a problem. I call it comp contamination, and it is the absolute core of this entire issue. This right here is the heart of it. We think we're comparing apples to apples, but we're really not. We're actually creating a statistical mirage. We're blending 2 totally different products with completely different cost structures into one single flawed number. That number might feel right, but it doesn't represent anything that actually exists in the real market. And look, this isn't some small problem in a few neighborhoods. We're talking over 31,000 new units permitted in the Raleigh-Durham area just last year. This is a massive market-wide thing. So if you're pulling comps in Cary, Apex, Durham, or right here in Raleigh, you are going to run into this. There's really no way to avoid it. So what really happens when this contaminated data gets out there? Well, it leads to 3 very specific and often very expensive collisions in your deals. Let's break down the first one. This one is the most common, the most immediate problem. We see that shiny new build comp, we don't know the whole story behind the number, and we use it to price resale. Let's just do the math. On a pretty typical new build around here, you might see, say, $22,000 in closing credits and maybe another $15,000 for a rate buydown. You add that up, that is a $37,000 value difference that a resale home just can't compete with head-on. It's an invisible discount that makes that new build's recorded price dangerously inflated. And the consequences? Well, they're pretty predictable, right? The resale gets priced too high. The seller, who's looking at that same new build comp, now has totally unrealistic expectations, and the house just sits 45, 60 days on the market, all because that first analysis was based on a bad comp. Okay, the second collision happens from the buyer's point of view. It's not just about the incentives, it's about the actual stuff they're getting for their money. So check out this example from Apex. For just a $15,000 price difference, a buyer can get a brand new house with quartz counters, a smart home package, and a 10-year structural warranty. Now, the resale at $410,000 has its own amazing value, a mature lot, an established community, but that value is intangible. We can't pretend that for $15,000, a buyer isn't getting a whole lot of brand new, warranted features. And now for the third and honestly the most painful collision, the appraisal. This is that moment where our statistical illusion comes crashing into a lender's hard financial reality. You see, a good appraiser will separate new construction from resale comps. They already know their different markets. So when our CMA blends them, we set a price expectation that the appraiser just won't support. The data is clear. CMAs that use mixed comps are almost 3 times more likely to end in an appraisal gap. And then the deal stalls, you're back to renegotiating, and trust starts to break down. Okay, so that is the problem. It's complicated, it's everywhere, but it is solvable. The solution is to stop blending and start segmenting. It just takes a more thoughtful, professional framework. So here it is. It's a simple 3-step process. First,
Segment your comps. Literally create two separate buckets, new builds and resales. Never, ever mix them. Second, when you do use a new build comp for context, you gotta do the homework. Investigate and annotate it to show the effective price after those incentives. And third, and this is so important, you have to articulate the value. Explain to your client why you separated them, and then talk through the very different value propositions of each type of property.
This last piece is what separates someone who just dumps data from a true advisor. It's not enough to do the right analysis. You have to be able to communicate it. This means showing your work, explaining why you've created two different comparison groups, and framing it all as a strategy to price their home with the most confidence possible. At the end of the day, this is about professionalism. Our job isn't to find one perfect, magical number. It's to provide an honest, defensible price range that reflects the true market for their specific kind of home. Blending data creates this false sense of precision that just doesn't hold up. Walking your clients through this process builds incredible trust. It really comes down to this. Your comps have to compare like to like. It's all about reflecting reality, not some weird statistical average. We actually built this exact segmentation logic right into CMAflow, so you can annotate and separate your comps the right way every time. If you want to check that out, there's a link for you below. So I'll just leave you with this question. The next time you build a CMA for a client here in the Triangle, just take a hard look at your comps. Are they reflecting the actual, nuanced market we work in every single day? Or are you just creating a statistical illusion?